Networking can feel so overwhelming, especially as an introvert. It can feel like, what am I supposed to say? Who am I supposed to talk to? And then add in the idea that we're business owners and we need to make sales and we need to network and we need to connect with the right people. It can feel like a lot. Today's guest, Swire Ho, is going to talk about that and so much more. And I am telling you, the tips, tricks, and strategies that he gives are perfect for the introverts. He has questions to ask, he has people that you should be connecting with, how to figure out who you need to connect with, and all of that, not just for in person networking, but also as a podcast host and a podcast guest. You are going to love this episode if you are into networking, but maybe a little scared of it. Join me in welcoming Swire Ho to the podcast. Hello, Swire. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I'm very excited about our conversation. If you could start by telling everyone who you are, what you do, and more about your business.
Thank you, Alicia. Thanks for having me on the show. My name is Swire Ho. People also call me the promo guy. It's the name probably give you a hint. I'm in the promotional product industry. What I like to do is I tell people that we help them grow sales and unlock their brand's potential with meaningful promotional product. Because a lot of people think about when they hear about industry, they think about the word swag, which stands for stuff we all get. So happy to unpack some of the information and how I'm using some of the strategies that I use to stand up for myself.
Yes, you said meaningful promotions. And I really love that. As podcasters, right, it's really important that we're getting in front of the right people, we're getting in front of the right audience, and giving promotions that are strategic but also are meaningful. So today we're going to talk through a few of the different strategies to be the go-to person in podcast guesting, but also making those deeper connections with those podcast hosts, or as a host with those guests that we have on our show. When it comes to creating meaningful promotions and creating meaningful connections with other people, where do you see people go wrong usually?
They go with like a shotgun approach. For example, let's assume we're at a trade show or event, right? Like business type event. They are arming with their business card. Their goal is to give away all the business card and then get tons of business card. And that was it. But I asked them, what do you do with those business cards afterwards? They normally say, okay, I send them some email and that's it. I would rather to make a deeper connection, maybe with a couple or even, one contact who really can resonate with you. And the goal, I know we're going to talk about networking, is not to know many people, but to know those one that can really help you and to achieve where you want to go.
I'm an introvert, and so networking events kind of freak me out sometimes. And I feel like, oh no, I have to see all these people. And that approach is one that I love because it's telling me, okay, Alicia, if you go to a networking event, you don't have to know everyone that is there. It's about creating that deeper connection, which I love, with those very few people. Lovely. I could do that. And it's very doable, right? And also, it allows you, if you're at an event, you probably want to pay attention to what's being spoken about. You probably want to learn more. You're there to learn, to engage. So it allows you to also have space for that without feeling like, how many business cards do I have? So I love this approach. What are some other ways that you see people go wrong?
Well, I think one way to do if you talk introverts, myself also, but I belong to two different chamber of commerce. My approach is when I walk into a room or a networking meeting, I'll look at there are the two types of people that I looked at. There are ones that everyone is around them. They're like the magnet. They're like the alpha, right? Everyone wants to talk to them. I want to talk to that person, and I would want to get to know them because they are open and genuine anyway. So I'll ask them, this is my business and this is what I'm trying to do. Do you know that someone in the room that might be able to connect with me that could help me with what I do? Chances are they already know everyone in the room. So a lot of times I would go to that person first and then they could actually help me filter out the room. On the other hand, there are a lot of times myself sometimes do that. They try to stay busy, try to pretend they're eating, but try to avoid a conversation. Try to drum up a conversation with those people. You'll be surprised once they open up, once they warm up to you, the conversation that you can bring up from that person.
It's the same with us introverts, right? Like, usually we're in the corner, like, nope, I've got a book in my hand or I'm eating, don't bother me. But once you get us to open up, we can be really personable. That is
Hmm.
such a great tip. When it comes to podcasting, right? So those are not always in person. What are some ways that we can make sure that we're making those meaningful connections with people that way?
As a guest or as a host?
Let's talk both.
As a guest, it didn't start out that way, but obviously in my industry, there are shows that the host want to ask me about what's the effectiveness of promotional product. They ask me a lot of tough questions, right? I spent like 45 minutes trying to answer it, but not I didn't know at that time they're actually trying to ask me their own question. So they're actually spending 45 minutes grilling me to find the best item for them. Luckily, I got calls from them afterwards. I actually want to buy that item that you mentioned on the show. So as a guest, I that's not my intention, but somehow you could impress and have a meaning, deepening a conversation with Tails because you are ready to open up. Because sometimes when we get on sales call, sometimes we don't tell all the information. But whenever I become a guest on a podcast, I like to share all the information that I know. So I think in that aspect, that actually we open up to people more. So I think I made a lot of good connection guesting on podcasts.
That is such a great point, and I hadn't even made that connection before of, like, when you're on a sales call, I mean, you're already kind of defensive a little bit, you're not entirely sold on the idea, but when it comes to podcasting, you're like, "Oh, you're just a person, let's have a conversation," and you wanna give value, right, as a guest, you wanna share as much as you can, and it does end up happening where the host is usually asking some questions that they're wondering as well or that they want to know the answer to. So that definitely makes so much sense that that would be the case.
Yeah, and then on the host side, it would be I think it enables me to make leeway to connection that I normally wouldn't have before. Because now with the podcast, yeah, as you know, Alicia, what I could do is instead of going to a lower level, not lower level, like a representative from the company, I can actually say, I have the podcast. I'm really intrigued by what your CEO or your head of marketing is doing right now. Can I have them as a guest on my show? So I using that, I can actually go a lot further up the chain to talk to the people that I relate to. And and now I flip the table. I say, what are some of the challenges that you face in your particular field? If you have X, would you think it would be better? That kind of answer all the questions that I need in my sales process. They're this pain point, well, which I can solve. They want to meet these people. Maybe I can connect them with people I know in the Chamber of Commerce, and then I become useful to the guests. I also have made a lot of good connection. It's a slower process, right? But from my prospecting, from my internal sales process, I think it's benefited me a lot, having my own podcast.
Yeah. I'm even thinking about what you said of like you're able to ask those questions, but the ask your yes, you could sell them on something. There is that potential there, but you also mentioned you could connect them with someone who can support them. So it's not that you're
Hmm.
going into the conversation with, okay, checked my box. Yep, I'm going to sell them my thing. It's you're looking at it from a broader perspective, right? Not just of what can I get, but how can I really support this person, which I love? Because sales can feel like very, especially how sales tends to be portrayed as very madmen, go get them, aggressive type of like, all right, I'm going to take all your money. But that's not what you're talking about at all. You're talking about very intuitive and helpful and encouraging and ways that feel good.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I don't never sell people when they go onto my show. But think about you have some kind of pain right now, and there's a person who could take that pain away from you. Then you are willing to talk to the person. Then you willing to see that person as a consultant, as an advisor. Because in my industry, it's very competitive. But if a company knowing that there's some person out there, the promo guy person, right, who knows our pain, and then he's willing to go out of the way and take all those pain or things that we don't want to do from us. Why don't we just work with this guy?
Yeah, it makes it so much easier. I love also that you mentioned it makes it so much easier to get in front of the right person. So you don't have to, if you're pitching them on LinkedIn or maybe you're sending out an email, there's a lot of what ifs to that, right? Whereas if you say, hey, I have a podcast, huge selling point. I would love to feature you on my show. Perfect. That makes it so much easier for someone to say yes than if you just say, hey, I would like to get on a sales call with you.
Not only that, I because I do that with my regular client. So let's say client is always figure out what event they could do to grow their business. So sometimes I'll have event professional. Sometimes I'll know what my clients' pain points are, and I actually go and find the expert to come onto the show. So I actually not me answering it. I'm actually finding your expert, asking them all the questions that you want to ask, and afterwards I'll actually send them to listen to the podcast. So people appreciate that. So I actually take notes for what they care about, and I that's my guess, appearance criteria is what my clients care about, and I'm finding expert to answer those questions.
Ah, I love this. So you're using your podcast in more than just a, hey, I want to create a connection and I want to create content. Cool. You're saying, how can I further develop not just my relationship with the guests that I have on my show, but with my current clients to keep me top of mind as someone that they not only can refer business to because I have valuable information, but also someone that they can continue to do business with because I continue to support them. Gold.
Yeah, I would rather be the first person they want to call when they think of, oh, we have this challenge. Can we call Swire? And they see, he seems to know the answer. So I would willing them to call me, and then later on say, maybe I need to refer you to someone, then have them to go on to a search. Sometimes that how you lose a customer, right? They start searching, they find something newer and cooler, and then you
Yeah.
don't hear from them anymore.
Yes, which we don't want, right? Obviously, we don't want that. So, let's talk networking. Like, what are some of the best ways that we can truly go about networking in really authentic ways that feel really good for us, like we've been talking about, but like taking it kind of a step further?
Depending on the industry, right? So every industry is different. There are people who like online networking still. I still love online networking because I could go to different places, different time zone, and have a good conversation with people. In-person networking is back a big way, and also a lot of trade show. So I do like to go to networking event or specific event also. Or if I notice that there's a certain sector of a client that I want to work with, which I don't know about the industry, I'll actually go to like industry specific trade shows or networking meeting just to learn and talk to the people. Like, what do you care most about? Like, what are some of your challenges? And I just listen. I become a good listener. I don't even sell them or really suggest what I do. I just want to listen in and then see how I could be useful in any way when the needs come up.
Have you found that people well, one, have you found as an introvert that it's harder to like approach people, or what are some of your like internal prompts to kind of make yourself go do this?
It's tough, right? So that's why, as I mentioned before, I go to the magnet person, go to the alpha people. Like I would tell them, and they're generally really open up to, and they talk to anyone, right? So I would give them a little pitch or what I do, who I'm trying to meet. Especially, you have to be specific. If you don't know anyone at that meeting, you have to know who would you like to meet. If you can meet any person in the room, so be specific, and then that person usually can point me to a good general direction where I can make some meaningful connection. Yeah, it's nice to talk to people about football, about your vacation home when you're at trade show, but that's not what you're there for, and you have to keep in mind about that. Small talk is okay, but deep on about football, what they did last night's game, it's not.
Right. So yes, we can touch on that stuff, but let's take it further. We're there to do business, right? And we're there to make the connections that we need to potentially do business. Have you found when you do go to these trade shows and you're having these conversations that people do open up about their struggles, or are there certain questions that you kind of have to ask before you get to the what are your struggles? Because I think like if someone comes up to me and they're like, hey, even at an event, if they're like, what are your struggles with motherhood? I'm like, what are you trying to sell me? You know what I mean?
I actually have a list of questions and under my monitor. So every time that I'm on a call, I would do that. For example, some of the question is in the industry, what would be a successful years for you? and then you just shut up and listen. So they will tell you, well, if I'm successful, I'll have this, I'll have this amount of people work for us. And then the follow-up question is, and that's the pain point, what do you think are stopping you from getting there right now? So obviously they're
Mm.
not there yet. What do they have to do to achieve that success they're looking for? So I think those are the two questions that could really fit onto any type of industry or any type of information. Like, what would be success? Or even if I'm trying to lose weight, for example, how much weight do you want to lose, and what stopped you from getting there today? So
Mm.
substitute whatever that you wanted to put in on the topic, and I think those two works for me really well.
Yeah. That's really good. And it starts with like a highs, right? Like, "Ooh, these are pretty. This is good. This is exciting." And then like, "Oh man, not there yet. And here's probably why and what's going on there." So I love that. Anything else on like the networking side that we can talk about that you're like, "Don't forget to do this."
Thing is about that person is, I know it's about you, right? You want the contact, you want the business, but do you try to be a good listener and be helpful? What I do, especially because I've been a member for the Chamber of Commerce a long time, so I know quite a few of people there. So I will even ask them and be helpful. Who would you like to meet? I'm playing like the alpha person, right? Who would you like to meet? If I know them, I can connect with you. Would you like that? Sometimes when they tell me and I happen to know the exact person or the contact they want, I'll walk them over, introduce that person, do a warm handover, and people appreciate that. They're human being. You are there to make a sale, I know, right? But think of them like normal human being. Like, open up the conversation, be helpful, see what's in others' mind, and can you really do things to help them?
Yeah. Considering them like how would I want to be approached? How would I want support, right? That's really important too. Humanizing the person, not just as like a number on your spreadsheet that you need to hit. We talked about referrals a little bit before when we were talking about the types of podcast content that you can come up with. Referrals can be hard sometimes, especially if you're maybe just starting out and you're really tweaking your processes and trying to get it right. Now you've been in the entrepreneurship I wanted to say battle journey for 20 years or over 20 years, right? So you're not new to this at all, but if for people who are newer and are maybe not the well known or the guy in their industry, what are some things that we can do to create better referrals for ourselves?
I think that is a simple answer, but then people were taken by surprise. Like, the way that you could get more referral is you give more referral to others. People will be like,
Mm.
what? How does that work? You always wanted to refer back to someone if they can set you up with a good connection, if they help you land a big deal, right? So they don't ask for it, but you feel like you're in debt to that person, right? They took me to this event. I met all these people. Next time, when I have something new, I got to bring them along. So think about that. Like, how can you? I mentioned the two question, right? What does success look like? What are stopping you from achieving your success today? So those are actually a lot of referral you can generate. Maybe, oh, we are not doing well in marketing. Our tax is a mess, right? So already I could think of like marketing executive, maybe a CPA, or things that they actually mention. Do you know such a person, or do you know such a resource that you can help them? I consider that as a referral. Like, if someone try to sign up for something or do something that they don't know, even if you know a podcast, even if you know like a YouTube video that can help them, that I would consider a referral already.
Yeah, I can think about people who, even a simple question of, "Oh, where did you get that spreadsheet?" So I was recently talking to someone, they were showing me I read a lot of books in the year. The program that I use to track my books does not have the ability to track my spending on books and how much did I spend in the year on books. I need to know that. And so looking at that and being able to say, okay, I need something for that. And I saw someone post about it. I'm going to ask that person. And she didn't say, oh, I have this thing that I could sell you. It was, oh, I went to this person's video and they have a ton of resources. And not only did this person's video have great resources, but they also mentioned several other people in the book community that were on YouTube that also have resources. And so, which then led me down a rabbit hole of subscribing to all of these YouTube channels and getting more information from all of these different YouTubers who are using all of these things. But it goes back to that person of like, if I need something or I'm like, hey, I have a question about something, I'm probably going to go talk to her. And so if she has a service or if she creates a spreadsheet, you better believe I'm going to buy it or I'm going to refer people to her because she was the one that brought that information. So I love that, just the roundaboutness of it that it can create for us, especially if we're just starting out, right?
Let me give you another example. At least I like where you're going. So my wife belongs to a Facebook group. It's a mommy group, right? They talk about kids, where to go to school, where, after school program, what they eat, like things like that. It's random, right? So my wife is really helpful, and then she connect with a lot of the moms out there where they actually get in person and meet up. So sometimes they post their challenge, like I need to find piano lesson for my kids, but this time, a member asked, I need to find some printed jacket for my company. Who do you know? So people throw a lot of names out there, but then a couple of the moms out there knows my wife really well. Say her husband is in the industry. Why don't you just talk to them? So one thing led to another. I get to the conversation with that mom looking for the jacket. Turns out that she worked for a big giant aircraft corporation. Let's keep it at that. And then we end up vetting the process and getting a good size order. So this is a long way, complete circle. Didn't start out in business at all, but you actually doing well. You are providing value for others. So when it comes time to something that they know that you need, they will refer you. That's how really organic referral is all about. And it's about giving people like you. You won't give referral to someone that you don't like, right?
Right. Yes. Oh, that's what a great example, right? Like that's not a quick, I went to a networking event and I got some referrals. That is such a roundabout way, but it is a way that was able to get a substantial order. And not only that, I'm sure that person then is able to refer you to even more business. So it keeps compounding on itself. So I love that so much. Ah, so good. As podcast hosts, what are some ways that we can continue the conversation with our guests to keep the referrals alive? So, one thing I know that I like to do is at the end of the conversation, I'll say, thank you so much for being on. Is there anything I can do to support you? Right? Like, it's a very easy way of like, are you looking for anyone? Do you need anyone? Are there any questions? Can I connect you with anyone kind of way that still allows me to be supportive and also allows them to be like, no, I'm good. But if I think of anything, I'll come back to you. But what are some ways that you recommend that people, as podcasters, keep the connection alive post the interview?
What you're doing, Elisa, is very good. I would encourage everyone to do that. I also connect with them on LinkedIn. When the episode is live, I'll generally do a LinkedIn post and do all my social media posts to obviously tag the person. And then whenever that I have a client that needs their service, I'll actually send them the episode. And, I just met with so-and-so in this industry. He talked about that. I know that you care about. Do you think that's something that you wanted to be connect with? I could happily to connect you. So I'm now trying to build goodwill on both sides, right? To helping my client and then also helping my guests to potentially, talk to a new leads that they wanted to meet.
Yes. Ah, so good. Is there anything else that we missed that you're like, don't, we got to also talk about this before we go?
I think networking and podcasting and all the guesting that people are trying to do, it's a long process. I get frustrated sometimes. I get to networking event and I talk to so many people. I help them 50 times. They don't help me once. And I'm frustrated. I usually complain to my wife a lot about that. But you have to keep doing them. Sometimes, it comes the right way and be known to that person. That's why when we talk about, I like to call myself, I want to be the go-to expert in the promotional product industry. So I don't really, how many doctors can you name besides your own family doctor? How many podcast hosts besides the top 10 famous one can you name? What if you could make yourself to become the go-to expert? When people think about promotional product, they think about me. When people think about a fitness consultant, they think about you. So your way is to use all this networking, all this guesting, hosting to groom yourself, so to speak, to become the expert. One thing I would suggest all the listeners to do after this episode is to Google your name and see what comes up. Nowadays, whenever I finish a conversation, I'll Google that person. I go on LinkedIn and see what that person is all about. So are those the information that you want people to see? There are ways to do that, and I'm sure that you have a lot of information to show, Elisa. But think of it as a long game. It's not it's not a quick one and done.
I actually just have an example for that. I was on a call with an investment firm to help them with their podcast, give them some strategies. And the person I met was their marketing director. So it wasn't like the host or it wasn't, any of the head honchos, but pretty high up. And then yesterday I saw that she had sent me a LinkedIn friend request or whatever they're called now, connection request. And I thought, well, it's a good thing that I keep my LinkedIn up to date and that I'm promoting stuff and I'm keeping my content up there, because if she would have connected with me a year ago, I'd have been like, oh no. Right. So like you're right. It is a long game in keeping those connections and keeping all that content going and going. But I think podcasting and the connections that we can create with it are so worth it. Swire, this has been so good. Thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you, connect with you, buy some stuff from you with you if they need to, if they are looking for promotional materials and all of that?
Okay, thank you, Alyssa. So obviously, Google my name and see what the results come up. So that's one thing. I really spend time crafting that to show you things that I want you to see. So do that. If you like to talk business, you can visit garudapromo.com and also do connect me on LinkedIn. I'm really active on there. And if you have any questions or think about anything that I said that is crazy or that is useful, send me some feedback.
Yes, I love it. We'll make sure we have links for that in the description and the show notes. So if you guys are driving or listening on the go, then you can definitely get those as well. Thank you so much, Swire. This was so good.
Thank you.